similar fashion?
I don't really think that it was built that much. I think that the voice was always there. I think the actual physical equipment, the vocal cords, were capable of doing that. I didn't think they were, and because my mother was a mezzo-soprano, and because we had all that music in the house, and because she was terrified, I think, of doing any damage to the voice, because she did perceive that there was something a bit sort of special maybe there. She didn't want to extend the voice and do any damage before a certain age. She said that I shouldn't really work on the voice before I was 18, and I think she was right, because I think the proof of her guidance is there insofar as it's been a long time since I made my debut.
Yes.
I think it was also, granted the fact that Joan has a big voice, it was very wise and very fortunate that she began as a mezzo-soprano, because she started singing with the voice centered low. And I think this is very important when you are singing the bel canto repertoire, because if you have a voice which is centered high and is lighter, you can't produce the emotion that is required for these hefty roles.
You started out with basically a core of a voice, and you went from there, but you had to be convinced.
Oh, well, Richard had to convince me. I mean, the only way he convinced me was the fact that I have I don't have perfect pitch, I have relative pitch. And he would make me get away from the piano and really tricked me into accepting that I could sing the higher register notes, that I could sing in a higher tessitura. I had been working up to it by singing, I guess, some of the Handel pieces had taken the voice into a tessitura that sat high, and some of the Mozart sits in a high area. But I never really essayed to sing the straight-out so-called coloratura roles. I didn't think of myself singing sort of high E's and F's, although I actually have sung an F sharp, haven't I?
In public?
Never in public. Well, she's sung high F's in public many times, but the F sharp she's talking about was very much a private affair. She got in a very wild rage with me one day because she was quite sure that I was ruining her voice by putting it up there, and she shrieked an F sharp to prove that she couldn't. Only she could.
So that was the end of me.
You know, we throw around this term bel canto, and we've been doing it for decades and decades, and essentially it means beautiful singing. But don't
That's what it is.
But don't you feel, though, that it means having at your command, at your disposal, everything imaginable and everything possible in the vocal artillery?
Yes, it does.
Yes. And in a way you've worked, I mean, you've spent a lifetime developing that artillery, so to speak, so that it's all possible.
But you know, the older I become, the more I think that bel canto is not only beautiful singing. I think that's the basis of bel canto. But I think a singer that shows that all they think about is beautiful singing brings about the death of bel canto, because all the bel canto has to be very dramatic and has to be very alive. And this is more than singing vocalies.
It's phrasing.
It's creating living characters who sing gloriously. That's bel canto.
But don't you think it comes through phrasing and coloration and
all,
dramatic
all
effects?
All part of it, and a supreme technique, which should never be, the public shouldn't be aware of a singer placing notes or showing how difficult a thing is. In fact, it should seem fairly easy.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of people say when Joan sings that it looks so easy. Well, it's not. But that's the trick, to make it seem easy. It should seem easy.
Well, it's interesting, on a recent documentary about Sir Laurence Olivier, he said that acting is technique, and that technique should be the prime consideration of any actor, because it then gives that actor versatility.
This is true, but the technique must not be shown to the public.
Yes.
I'm sure he didn't let the technique show.
No, but he was accused
Sometimes.
by the critics of letting that technique show and come across as his first consideration. And that was one of the things that critics had him for.
I think in his great roles, he didn't show the technique.
And sometimes I think that in some of your critiques, they've said, well, you know, she's a technical marvel, but, and then there were all the yes buts, and maybe there are not enough words, there's not enough theater or whatever in past times.
Well,
No, but maybe at times she did show the technique too much. But the technique must be there.
But in a way, that's the beginning of it all, because you can't go out on raw emotion and perform basic...
Absolutely not.
You'd
It's
be
the, pub-
voiceless
it's the
by the end of the
public that
first
have to
act.
feel the emotion. The public must be absolutely destroyed by emotion, but not the singer on stage, because how can they possibly control all the time? Because singing is control, very much. They have to control the throat, they have to control the diaphragm, they have to control the breath. They must only control the mind. And if you have to control your own mind in order to control the public's mind.
Well, that's why I guess we've seen a number of people fall by the wayside, and the fact that the whole battery of things hasn't been in order, and you have kept yours in order. Not only in order, but I just think it
I've
gets
tried.
better and
I
better.
wouldn't say that it's always in order. I mean, some nights one is capable of doing much more than one is on others, and it has always been thus. No matter how technically proficient you may be, you will always have nights when it just clicks that much more than others. And sometimes they're not the nights when you think it's clicking that much more than others either.
Well, just because
so you
Richard...
just don't know.
Richard said because you don't hear yourself, and in
That's
a way,
right. That's
you
really-
can be giving a completely different performance in your hearing and your
Yes,
head.
but you can feel when everything gels the way you want it to, and it's not very often.
Dame Joan, it's no secret that you've been singing in the public eye since the early 1950s. How do you account for these many, many wonderful years on the stage, and also maintaining such a high level along the way?
I think I've been fairly disciplined. I've set myself certain restrictions. We never sort of travelled backwards and forwards on a jet from one place to another too fast. I mean, if you had a concert tour, you had a concert tour, and you did the rounds. But if I've been recording, I've mostly just been recording. I haven't been singing an opera, say, in London at the same time. I have colleagues who come to recording sessions flying in from other cities, and I find I never could do it. I became disoriented. I wasn't quite sure where I was, and I wasn't quite sure what opera I was singing, and one had a sort of a detached feeling up there, and I didn't like it, so I never really tried to do more than one thing on the whole at a time. I have done recording while I have been singing at Covent Garden, but I have stayed in London all the time, and I think it paid off.
So
I think the jet has a lot to answer for.
She also sang in the right repertoire for
Exactly.
most of her life. I think that's very important, because, you know, singing Donizetti and Rossini and Bellini, it's like medicine for the voice all the time.
And it's kept the voice basically high in placement and healthy.
On the contrary, it's kept the middle in good order.
The middle, okay.
And it's the middle of the voice which is the most important
middle
part
of
of
the
the
voice
voice.
is
If
the
your middle
crutch
of
of
the
the
middle of
whole
your
thing.
voice is in good order, you'll be able to do whatever your voice is capable of, which is sing high notes or low notes. But if your middle is not in good order, then you can forget the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what so many young singers today, I hear them before performances, they are screaming and practicing their high notes all night in the dressing room.
If you have a good
You
technique,
wear
the
them
high
out.
notes will be there. You have to have faith in that they will be there. If you've got the middle under control, then the bottom and the top should follow.
Yes.
I don't go too much towards the bottom, but one does hear them trying out their high notes all the time. And if I did that, I would feel as though I'd have nothing left by the end of the
It
performance.
becomes kind of a preoccupation.
It's a
Listening
certain
to the high.
nervosity. It's a certain
People are
sort
worried
of,
they won't be there, but you know,
but
you have to
either
be sure
they're
that
there
they
or
are
they're not.
there.
It's the old story of Björling saying, you know, that he didn't warm up, that if he was well, he didn't need to, and if he wasn't well, it wasn't going to do any good anyway. So, I'm a bit like that myself. I do a few phrases, but no excessive warming up at all. I sing the sort of roles that give me plenty of exercise on the voice anyway.
Dame Joan, what in the whole bel canto artillery, what was the hardest thing for you to master? What gave you the most problems? Was it learning how to trill, or?
Oh no, trill was always there.
Mm-hmm.
I never really had to learn how to trill.
What didn't come naturally?
Legato.
I suppose a legato line in the upper register.
No, in the middle register.
I mean, in knitting a whole series of notes together in a very
Right,
meaningful
right.
Well, I mean,
phrase.
to a certain extent, but my mother had always said that you had to, although that there might be a middle and an upper and a lower register, they all had to be joined together without any bumps or seams showing. And I tried it, and I thought I was doing quite well, but he tells me that it was
No, it's a
pretty
matter of fact,
rocky.
A little lumpy.
I think it's very interesting when one looks back. I think she used to sing with a very rather unlegato, rather Germanic style in the beginning, and then
Part of it's
and
the
in
English
looking for the
language.
this wonderful legato line. I think that was the cause of all
the mushy
mushy
diction.
which we got hold over the coals for.
So you
for
can never
many years.
win,
So you
right?
can't win.
I think in the last sort of 10 years we've managed to balance it out much more.
But they still talk about the mushy diction.
But it's, all these are problems. Singers are always going to find problems, and the problems don't go away even when you become very, very famous.
Well, it's very difficult to enunciate in the high areas of the voice. You cannot.
Also,
Without
you-
either making a bump or if you don't enunciate, you might get a better legato line. But it's very, very difficult.
but spinning out a seamless line and getting every consonant is a difficult
Well, we
combination.
try for perfection, but you know, it's
Never quite there.
it's,
But certain vowels make more beautiful sounds. And, I mean, the speaking in English, the A and the O vowels make the most beautiful sounds. The E and I vowels tend to be
Squeezed.
harder and not so round. And Garcia, in his treatise, says you should sing all cadential passages, all runs of any description, no matter what word you're singing, on the R vowel.
Avo, yes.
But you do that today, then you're criticised for having bad diction. So where are you?
Did you say you're doing
do you sing,
vocalises?
do you sing bel canto, or do you to be quite honest, one has to make compromise. Modern taste.
As the years go on with such spectacular singing, does it get easier or harder?
I think from the learning point of view, because one doesn't learn as fast, and I never did learn that fast anyway, it becomes harder. But I think from the performing point of view, one's much more relaxed about it. One isn't so tense. One feels that you can only accomplish so much. And although the audience, I think, expects a little more than they should, I think one has become a little bit too much of a good thing. But one doesn't worry about the performances as much, and I think that helps too, because it gives you a much better basis on which to get out there and do it.
You know, I look at your face and I see these wonderful high cheekbones and these obviously these great resonating cavities. Have you ever always felt that your physique and everything was made for singing?
I think so. I think it's a hand-me-down from my mother and the Scots ancestry to a certain extent. Even some of my nieces and nephews have similar features, and I think it has got a great deal to do with it. I think there is a great resonating cavity
Chamber,
there.
whatever it is.
Well, I think there is, and
What else is important? Is the high palate
definitely.
important?
No, this is definitely. I have got a very high palate,
Mm-hmm.
and
And what about
rather big mouth.
the big mouth
Oh, definitely. I have a marvellous chest cavity as well too.
and the diaphragm
Good,
for
good,
support?
Good diaphragmatic support, and there we are. Let's get on to singing, T.
You know, it seems that from what you've said and what I've read, that you started out with a tremendous gift of nature, and that was what you had in the two little
it was there.
chords.
It was there.
But that everything else took tremendous application and tremendous diligence, and that you really didn't take anything for granted, or maybe you couldn't take anything for granted.
Well, I certainly wasn't allowed to take anything for granted once I met and married him. There was no sort of backsliding permitted.
I mean, he kept the standard
Oh
up.
yes.
And you know, I think with singers, they're in the unfortunate position of not being able to hear themselves as the public hears them. I mean, no singer hears what they do.
This
I mean,
is true.
today they tend to trust a little bit to tape recorders and things like that, but even that gives them a very false impression of what they sound like, and it gives them a false impression very often of the size of their voice.
Yes.
You know, and I think every singer needs somebody to just listen, because faults creep in all the time. It doesn't matter who the singer is. I mean, there's no singer in this world is or ever has been perfect. In fact, it's very amusing when young singers come along and sing to one for auditions. You know, you frequently can spot exactly who they've been copying, whose records, because they not only copy the virtues, they copy all the faults as well.
So you've been, among other things, a monitor along
Oh,
the...
very
I suppose
definitely.
so, yeah.
Very definitely.
In hearing what's happening with the voice. And have you been able to see a great deal of change in Dame Joan's voice over these years?
Oh, I think it's become much warmer, much more thicker and bigger voice as she got older, and I think the voice contains much more emotion now than it used to. I find it to me it's a more interesting voice because it has many more facets now.
Maybe it's because we just think that it
it's
can't go on forever, so we can try a few more desperate things.
What drives you on? Just the fact that people keep offering interesting projects?
Oh, and also perhaps the idea that one might get bored. I don't know. I don't see how I could vaguely get bored because I have several interests, and I would like to have the feeling that I could pursue those without worrying about whether I caught a cold.
Do you both feel a little bit of weight of responsibility at this point in time? I mean, in a way, you've created your own era. The post-Maria Callas period has certainly been the era of Joan Sutherland and the Donizetti, Bellini, Rossini repertory. And in some ways, the bel canto revival wanes and ebbs and comes and goes.
I think the responsibility rests with people having paid out a heck of a lot of money to travel. Sometimes they travel from the other side of the United States or something and come to a performance, and they have not that much. They're paying for tickets out and fares out of their own income. I think the responsibility is to the public. I don't think either Richard and I have ever thought of ourselves as educators at all. I think people come to be entertained.
More entertainers.
And exactly.
We don't like ourselves if they don't like us.
We know. We hope that they enjoy the performance that they've paid for, and that's the responsibility.
You seem very focused on what you want and what you're after, and you go and do it.
Well, we're both
very lucky to have been able to do it.
and we're both very stubborn.
Yes. What about that stubbornness when it comes to working together?
Oh, well, someone has to give in. It's usually me. Thank you very much.
Your great anniversary, the 25th anniversary of your debut at the Met. And it doesn't seem like 25 years ago to me. I remember very vividly the tremendous excitement, anticipation of your debut, and then the even greater excitement after your debut. Do you remember how it felt then?
Oh, I do. I said then it felt like a response in a football stadium, and it was just the way it seems to this day. I really couldn't believe that such a success was possible.
Well, we had something similar just this month when you opened in this production at Puritani. Do you remember? I'm sure you remember.
It was very heartwarming, I must say. It was wonderful to come back.
Let me tell the audience who haven't read about it by now that at the beginning of the second scene of the first act, when Joan Sutherland came on, the audience wouldn't let her sing. They applauded for a solid minute. I have a stopwatch with me all the time.
Well, it seemed an awfully long time on the stage, I must say.
Over a minute, and then you went back off stage and started the scene again. And I've wondered, were you instructed to leave and come back?
No, I really didn't know quite what to do, and one was really quite emotional over the outburst, and somehow I felt it was better to go back because maybe the orchestra perhaps might not have come in the right place. Half of them might have started at the beginning again. I really didn't know. I just felt I'd like to go off stage and get psyched up as Elvira again, really.
It was one of the most exciting moments in the opera.
Well, it was for me, anyway.
I'm sure it must have been. Puritani is a role you've sung here before. You made your debut as Lucia, and both those operas are famous, and you are famous for the mad scenes. But there's a difference in many differences, but one that I'm thinking of is the fact that in Lucia, you go mad and that's that. In Puritana, you come back a
I'm
couple
sort of
of
in
times.
and out all the time,
Right.
yes.
Does that present an extra difficulty?
It's a bit difficult to get across because there's not much span of music to do that, and it is difficult.
Well, you just talked about psyching yourself up to make your second entrance as Elvira. Do you do something of that kind when you're off stage in between the periods of sanity and...
Oh, no, not really. I always find I just like a little bit of quiet before I actually go on to the scene. I say psych myself up, but I think it's just a matter of just
Getting
being,
set.
just being quiet and preparing oneself for what's going to go on out there.
In the scene before this entrance, you have that beautiful offstage quartet, the hymn.
Yes.
Do you have a special feeling about ensemble singing like that, as apart from all the many arias and the brilliant choruses, but small ensembles, do they mean something special to you, or?
Well, I always try and learn them that much better than the solo parts, actually, because I like to really know my way around them. It doesn't always work, but I try. I think there are some very difficult little ensemble pieces. Of course, the offstage piece, we usually all have the music sitting up in front of us anyway.
Well, I was lucky enough once to be standing just a few feet from you when you were doing that, and it's a marvelous effect. And
well, I mean, I don't think that one has any different feeling about it, really. You just seem to sing in the same way, but the only thing is that the music is there in front of you if you want it.
You were going to sing a special concert in January 11th. Can you tell us a little about the program for that?
Oh, yes, I believe it's the fountain scene of Lucia de Lammermoor with Pavarotti. Luciano and I are doing a joint gala, and we're doing the fountain scene together, and then I believe he's doing the tomb scene, and we're doing the last act of Rigoletto and the last act of Traviata.
And all three will be staged and in
Yes, they're all
costume.
staged in costume.
Well, we're looking forward very much to that. And January 11th, that will also be
Is it so
celebrated.
close?
Yes,
Oh,
it's
dear.
coming up. And that will be a telecast, too, in March, the tape of that concert. We're looking forward to that and helping to celebrate your 25th anniversary.
Well, it's a very, very sweet gesture, I must say.
Our congratulations once again and best wishes for a long continued career.
Not
Now,
too long, thank you very much.
let's turn back the clock to Dame Joan's first Metropolitan Opera season.
Dame Joan Sutherland made her Metropolitan Opera debut in November 1961 in Lucia. Since then, she's given us many brilliant Lucias and many wonderful performances in a number of other operas: La Sonnambula, La Traviata, Don Giovanni, Norma, La Fille du Régiment, Rigoletto, Tales of Hoffmann, Esclamonde, and today's Puritani. There have been 209 performances, and fortunately, there'll be many more. There have been several telecasts, 7 new productions, and today marks the 17th time that Dame Joan has been on a Metropolitan Opera radio broadcast. All in all, that represents a great gift to opera lovers throughout America. And today, we have a small gift for Dame Joan, a silver tray to commemorate the 25th anniversary of her debut in this house. Joan, you are a great artist and a great lady, and this tray is but a token of the respect and affection we have for you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. To you, my colleagues, both visible and invisible. There's hordes of them back there, you know. Dear friends and fans, thank you seems very sort of paltry for the great pleasure that I and Richard have had in this house and indeed in the old one. As you all doubtless know, we're grandparents twice over. And we've always been very happy to be with our family. It just so happens that in the nearly 40 years that we've been threshing around from Australia to Europe and places beyond, that we've gathered up a lot of other families in places like Covent Garden, Hamburg and Amsterdam, and I think you all know where we've been. So everywhere we go, there seems to be our theatrical family, and none of those is any more dear to us than the one we have here at the Met. The faces change, some of them disappear, but there's still a pretty hard core of people in this house that we remember from that very first Lucia, and it's really just like coming back to one's family, to be here, and then to see all those lovely faces waiting at the door for autographs when we go out. And there, I do thank you all very much, both fans and friends who are in the house today, and all those who are scattered about the United States. It's very sweet of you to make this presentation during the broadcast. I don't know if we're still on the air, but I must say thank you all for the wonderful response that you've given to those same years of our performances. It's no good our performing if you don't enjoy it, and we just are so happy that you have. Thank you all very much, and all those people backstage as well, these lovely colleagues, and those people with wigs and makeup, without whom I wouldn't be looking quite the way I am today. Thank you.